I'm Florence. I love React. Yeah, the sticker makes sense now. So I work for React.js Training. Michael Jackson and I started this company a year and a half ago, a little bit more than that. I'm going to get out of these lights. But raise a hand, who's been to one of our workshops? Awesome. Thank you so much for coming to those. It's been a joy for us to have a job where we get to run around and talk about a technology that's been so much fun to us. So thanks for coming to those. A little bit more to talk about before I get too much into my talk. Pronunciation. Did you know that when it's a verb, it's react? When it's a pronoun, it's react. You're supposed to pronounce the first syllable as the accent. So it's react. It's not Abramov, it's Abramov. So next time you see Daniel Abramov, pronounce his name correctly, and I bet he'll love you anyway, but he may love you even more. How about this one? Mark Beige. For some reason, there's a circle over the A, so we do like a zh on the end. I think it's Mark Boge, but I just give up on that one. If you go to his Facebook page, it has like a little pronunciation thing that you click, and then the computer says it to you, and it's not that helpful. My business partner, Michael Jackson, and my partner building React Router, and many other people who have helped out with that. It's not actually pronounced Michael Jackson. It's King of Pop State. He couldn't join us today. Everyone's throwing up at home. So, okay, I want to talk about the electrification of factories. Long time ago, everything used to be steam powered. You'd have this huge engine, or this huge steam engine, that everyone would have to connect to be able to get any sort of power. And the farther you were away from that engine, the less power you got. And so you were constrained on how you could build this system of a factory, and so they'd build up and have everyone really close to the steam engine so they could get enough power to do their job. And then ka-ching, we got electricity. And everyone is really excited about it, and they're like, hey, what's our productivity going to do with this new technology? Should be way higher, right? Wah, wah. It wasn't. Why not? So they switched from steam power to electric power, and all they did was swapped out the little motor underneath. They left the rest of their infrastructure the same. They literally took the wires for their factory and just moved it through all of the infrastructure that they already had for their steam engines. And so they didn't get any sort of productivity wins from that. Let's say that these are all the tasks of these different positions in the factory. Some of the managers start to think about this and like, hey, wait a sec. With power coming from electricity, we can actually string these wires anywhere that we want. We aren't constrained by how close we are to the power source anymore. And we can arrange the factory differently. And we can make assembly lines and different things like that. In fact, we don't even need more than one story anymore. We can just lay these wires out across one giant factory on a bunch of cheap land somewhere. So they rearranged everything because they could. So then what happened? Productivity went up. The technology on its own, when it replaced the old technology, didn't do anything for them. But when they rearranged the way that the factory worked, they got productivity. React, it came from some people who were willing to rethink best practices and kind of push off dogma about how things were supposed to be done. And they thought, hey, maybe we could throw some markup in the JavaScript and let's see what happens. Among other things, maybe we can just always re-render. And so the community's kind of like been raised in that setting, and we've seen so much awesome stuff all around these ideas of like, maybe we can do this now, maybe we can do that now. The website used to say React is the V in MVC. I'm glad the website doesn't say that anymore, because those of us who did it way back then, we were like, okay, cool, I'm going to pull this V out, and what do? Bring my backbone models in here? I don't really need that. I'm just going to call set state. The controller, like what? Why did they even mention the word controller on the React website? I got everything I need right here. I got my HTML sitting there in this file. I've got some state sitting there in this file. It's not over in like a controller file somewhere anymore. It's just right here where I have to deal with it. Maybe let's put some CSS in there too. Not everyone's on board with this quite yet. Maybe they never will be. But I sure have a lot of fun with it. And we kind of like rethought, okay, what are the proper separations of concerns? And rethought what those concerns were. And lots of excitement, lots of productivity. And we got a really strong sense of productivity when we were doing our workshops early on. We've spoken at meetups and done workshops literally across the globe, from San Francisco to Sydney, Australia. I spent some time in a prison cell in the United Kingdom. Didn't talk to anybody about React there. I just kept to myself and cried and wanted to die or something. I'll never see my kids again. They're lying to me. Anyway, that was a hard time. My palms are sweating now. And then, all of a sudden, we were like, wait. Did you see what Ohm did? That was cool. I don't know if it was Ohm's fault. But we all decided, state's bad. We got to get this thing out of here. I want that controller file back. I'm not going to call it a controller, though. I'm going to call them reducers, views, and action creators. Look at those things. Models hold your data. Reducers hold your state, your data. Views your view. Controller interacts from the view to the model. The action creator is how you get information from the view to your reducers, right? Not all that different from what we were doing before. We kind of did this with our factory. And we said, hey, let's put these wires where everything else was. I want something that's familiar. Now, I'm going to take a step back here and say that I think that Redux is amazing. Redux is a ton of fun to work with. Lots of people are very productive with it. And there's a lot of cool stuff that you can do when you put your state in Redux that you can't do if you don't. But what I do, this is interesting, this little tweet conversation here. Dan and Andrew are co-authors of Redux. And this is their conversation. It's meant for big apps with complex nested UIs and lots of local state mutation. For simpler apps, it's all unnecessary. In my experience, partner in this code, opposite is true. Redux is great for small to medium apps, hard to scale to large nested UIs. There's a ton of dogma right now that you've got to do Redux, got to do Redux, got to do Redux. And I don't get that same energy from people at our meetups and our workshops anymore that I used to about React being fun and productive. And yeah, fun and productive are the two things that I really care about and what we used to get from people. We don't get that as much when we're traveling around. And I've been trying to figure out why. I don't know why. But it just kind of makes me sad that the excitement is kind of replaced with a little bit of confusion, a little bit of like, why do I have 4 files open to add this feature? So Redux is great. I don't want to say that you shouldn't use Redux. You should absolutely use Redux if you're enjoying it, if you're productive, and if you have some use cases. What I do want to say is there are trade-offs to everything. Anyone know what this logo is? Yeah, hyperterm. It is really weird not seeing your faces. I'm used to like presenting in front of people and like I can see you smiling, but I've got no feedback, so I'll just like pretend like you're smiling. So hyperterm, this is awesome. Guillermo Rauch, good friend of mine. Whenever I'm in San Francisco, I love to go and grab breakfast with him. And we sat down just last week, and he was telling me about hyperterm. He's like, hey, there's a commit that I think that you'll like on hyperterm. So hyperterm is a terminal built with React and Electron. And he says, I want you to see this commit. So here's the commit. I love his subject, refactor. Don't refactors usually get rid of code? It's a lot of new code, right? That is a lot of new code. This is when he switched from component state to Redux. There is a cost. You've got more files. You've got more plumbing. Is it worth it? In the case of hyperterm, absolutely. He needed a plugin system. And for the plugin system to work, the plugins needed to be able to participate in the state of the app. And so Redux was a perfect solution for that. So there's a cost to bringing in abstractions, and there's a benefit. And I just wonder sometimes how much people consider that cost and benefit. Oops, I don't have my source maps turned on. So I just rendered a Rethinker, and I told it to not stop. Like, let's not stop rethinking. I love Redux. I really do. Like, when you pull open the Redux DevTools, have you seen those recently? If you haven't seen the new Redux DevTools, they're amazing now. You got that little slider pulling the state back, and you've got this weird async stuff going on, and you got weird flashes in your app, and you're like, why? So you pull the slider back, and you can figure it all out. It's a really great technology. My only concern is that we've gone back to something very familiar, those separation of concerns, the model and the controller, the reducer and the action creator. Redux is way better than the MVC stuff that I did before. I'm just worried that we didn't give components a fair shake yet. We're going straight to these like stateless functional components. Your whole app should be stateless functional components. UI is a tricky thing. UI's got state in there. You've got some interesting interactions going on, and React solves it or helps you manage that really well with the component state. So I'd like to just kind of explore components a little bit. I'm not saying don't use Redux. I'm saying maybe think about your components and give them more credit than you are. If all you have is a hammer, everything looks like a nail. So when I build a React app, I really do just like, I've got a problem, I'm going to type out a component and see if I can make it work. So what does it mean to be declarative? You've probably heard of a theremin before. Here's Leon Theremin.
Электромузыкальный инструмент терминвокс – это первый инструмент такого типа. Это песенно-голосовой инструмент. В нем управление мелодией достигается посредством влияния на электромагнитное поле около инструмента.
So when his hand gets closer to the rod, the pitch goes up and down. If it gets closer to the rod on the other side, the volume goes up and down. I built one over here. I'm going to play along with it. So let's, hey, thank you. I don't think anyone's used this part of the stage yet. Thank you. What does it mean to be declarative? Some of you are here, and maybe you already get it, like you've got it. Everyone who rose their hands to our workshops, I hope you got it. And you've seen this before at our workshops if you've been. Here's my little app. It's got a play and a stop and a change tone method, component did mount, I make an oscillator, and then when I enter and leave and move, I play and I stop and I change tone. What I don't like about this code is when I look at render, I have no idea what's going on. I have to experience time, right? We really like React because we don't have to think too much about time. We just think, okay, here's a blob of state, comes from my component, comes from Redux, it comes from anywhere, and then I'm going to render it. And then when something changes, the state changes, and then I just render again. We quit thinking about time. But this code accumulates state over time. They mouse enter, let's call stop. They mouse move, let's change the pitch and the tone. They mouse leave, now let's stop playing. And all of that line, we're accumulating state somewhere else that's not declared. And so we haven't eliminated time from our app. So the first way to get rid of time from your app is to declare some state. So let's do get initial state. Let's hear a golf clap for create class. Yeah, our old friend. Yeah, it's like your friend in high school that's still like, hey, you should come to my band show. We're recording a new record. All right, so am I playing? No. What's my pitch? It's 0.5. What's my volume? I'm at like 0.5. Oh, let's just in case, let's do 0.2. And then I've got these imperative methods here, and I don't want to do this imperative stuff anymore. These are the places that I accumulate my state. Instead, I want to set some state, and I'm going to say, hey, am I playing? Yes. Am I stopped? No. I almost typed no. It's going to be CoffeeScript for a second. I'm just going to like gather these things all together, all this imperative stuff. And then this one, I'm going to set my, let's see, I got my pitch and my volume. And I got this bag of imperative stuff that I used to be doing, but I'm not doing it anymore. So I want to do it when the component mounts, but I also want to do it when it updates. So I'm going to say this.do imperative stuff. And then when my component did updates, I'm going to remember how to use Vim, this.do imperative stuff. And remember my commas, because it's not a class. And we'll do our imperative stuff here all at once. We'll say, let's get our isPlaying and our pitch and our volume all from our state. And let's see if we're playing. I almost had a little bit of like bash there. You see that FI that showed up? In CoffeeScript, I love to do, you can do yes and no or on and off for Booleans. And so I would just do like on for true, and I do no for false. People working in structure, some of you may have seen that and been like, I'm glad he started his own company and got the heck out of here. Okay, so now I've got this one method to do all of my imperative work. So whenever I mount, whenever I update, I'm going to go and say, am I playing? Play the oscillator. Am I not? Let's stop it. Fortunately, these are item-potent methods, so I can just set the pitch and volume every single time. What's that? Thanks. My linter might have caught it too, but you guys are way better than a linter. Okay, so now, cool, it still works. But what did I gain? I wrote some more code. This is a test. Time is literally gone in my app. I couldn't boot my app up in a state like that before. But now that I declared this state, I could eliminate the time. But my render method still isn't all that cool. I can't see what I'm rendering, right? I got to look at two methods here. I got to look at render, and I've got to look at do imperative stuff to know like how this thing works. What if I forgot again how to use Vim? And what if I rendered a tone component? What would one of these look like? Is playing, this.state.is playing. Let's do our pitch. And let's do our volume. Now it's not going to render any UI, so let's make this thing. So we don't actually render anything here. And some people get really upset here, like, well, it's not UI if you can't see it. I would point you to all of the meta tags and the script tag and lots of other ones. Or talk to a blind front-end engineer. I worked with one for 2 years, and tell him that sound is not UI. And you say, well, that's weird. Then what the heck am I, the user, interacting with? So what do we do here? You may have noticed in your years of using React that very often refactoring React is simply cut, paste. Told you everything's a nail. I don't read this from this.state anymore. I read it from my props. All right. I don't want to have to switch windows. Let's set this back to true. It was really quiet. We can pump up the volume a little bit. Cool. So I gained something awesome here. Now I can see what I'm rendering. I'm rendering a sound, but I'm still rendering it. And I'm able to use React's lifecycle hooks to make anything declarative. So declaring our state lets us eliminate time. Declaring a component lets us do something a little bit more. We can compose now. Sorry. Kent C. Dodds like just, I was on Twitter and then all of a sudden I don't know what happened. I'm just trying to get the C out of your name. Okay, so we all know that React composes our UI really well together. Can it compose our state? Or do we really need to get all that state out of these components, or is there a way to compose that stuff? Here's a dumb app. Goes and hits the GitHub API for a user and gets their follower count. Holy crap. OK, app. Oh, we're modern now. OK. We're a little too modern because this isn't JavaScript. Anyway, got our URL. We fetch when we mount. We set the state. We see the user. Do we have one? Yes, we do. So let's render the login number of followers we have, and then we do a loading if they're not there. So a lot of times when we're looking at our components, we're thinking, OK, here's a block of code that I want to get rid of. Right? Like maybe this thing I can pull out into a header. And that's like a very straightforward refactor. And that's as far as most people go with their components because they got to be stateless functional components. And so they tend to be more like templates. But when you look at this kind of code that's sitting around in a component, you think, well, what can I do with this? Where can that go? How do I make that a component? We used to do mix-ins, right? This would be like some sort of mix-in, like fetch user mix-in. And that wasn't very fun because we were composing on the file system when we would create our classes. Maybe there's a different way to compose. What if we think about our components slightly differently? What if, like I said, when I have a problem, everything is a nail. So what if I wanted like a fetch user component? That thing will go and do this stuff, but how do I get this stuff back out? If you've used React Motion, you've seen this super wacky stuff. Let's give a function as the children. You know, we're just going to give it a function here. We can pass that in. It's React. We can pass whatever we want as children. And then I can pull this stuff up inside of here. You know, I can probably get away with, let's just call back with the user. And if we got the user, let's do that. Interesting. So how does that look? So we got fetch user. We pull this stuff out. And we won't need this anymore. So what do we render here? Well, we render this function that they gave us. OK. And I'm going to give it my state. So let's destructure that off of the state. So fetch user can go do some asynchronous work. I'm going to save this. And then it can call back with that data. That's kind of weird. Don't need mix-ins. Don't need action creators. We can take any behavior that a component's got, whether it's playing a sound with the web audio API, or if it's fetching data from a server. Pretty cool. Well, what if I want to show like the user's followers? And it's going to have like a, I'll give it the user. Let's do, well, so the user comes back and it's got a URL to go fetch more stuff. I don't want to do this component did mount stuff and like copy that and paste into there. Maybe there's a better component than this fetch user. Maybe I could just do fetch. Let's get my URL down there. You're out of here, fetch user. You were kind of weird anyway. So let's fetch that URL. Make sure that still works. Oh, not going to get a user in there. I'm going to get a data, but I want to call it user. Followers is not. What am I doing here? Get out of here. I should have looked at my linter. OK, so my fetch component works. Now I want to do this followers thing. And I can give it a URL here and say that the URL is user.followers URL. Let's make a followers up here. And it's going to render a fetch. And then this thing's going to give me some data, but I'm going to call it followers. Close that sucker. And then, I don't know, let's do a span. Do a followers map. Probably want my index for the keys. I learned from functional programmers how to name my variables in a map. No one should ever know what this is, as the code grows. Height 50, width 50, 5 dash, I wonder what that'll do. Key is my index. Let's format this a little bit better. I'm going to run out of vertical room. I'm also running out of time. And a source. We'll do follower.avatar URL. Avatar, The Last Airbender, is the greatest show ever. You should watch it. Yeah! Let's see. Oh, I might not have my followers. Followers and. Whoa! Here we are. Kind of cool. I'm composing my data a little bit here with just some components. That is not 10,794. Let's have a button at the end here. Let's say if we got, let's do it just right here. So this thing's going to give me something called links. Let's say if I've got links.next, then let's render a button. And say load more. More. Guess I'll stick with that. On click. What do I want to do here? Oh man, to load more, I'm clicking and I got to figure something out, and I guess I need some state. So I'm going to set some state and say load more true. Now actually that's going to be so hard for me to type correctly later. And I got 2 minutes? You want more? Normally this thing costs a lot of money. we want to get what we can out of this. I'll tell you now, if you come to one of our workshops, 50% is just trying to entertain you, and the rest is trying to learn. Okay, so I'm going to have some state. Load more, false. And so now when I click, my load more is going to be true. And so I can say, well, I don't want to render this button if I'm going to load more. So I'm going to say if this.state, well, let's destructure that up top. Load more. Oh. All right, if we want to load more and we've got a next link, let's do the button. Actually, I don't even want to. I'm going to do this a little bit differently. You're going to be really upset with my ternaries here in a second. So load more, yes, no. You can tell how sad that this is going to make you because it's actually right there in the code. See, sad face, double sad face. Don't do it. So if we want to load more, I haven't actually done this part yet. I just thought about it like right before the talk. Oh, If we want to load more, well, I've heard twice today, it looks like recursion, but it's really not. Let's do that again. This looks like recursion. I don't know, is it? I don't know. People were saying that. I'm like, why isn't it? But yeah, so followers, our URL is going to be our links.next.url. So I'm going to render a followers inside of followers. Line 10, thank you, linter. What did I do wrong? Oh, rookie mistake. Line 22 still? Oh, line 22, here we go. So great. I still got problems. Image elements must have an alt prop. Oh, yeah, that's probably true. Forbidden? Oh, great. Did they really rate limit me? I haven't even done anything. Like, I've barely done anything. Oh. Let's try one more time. Okay, well, it works. It's really cool because when you click the button, now we render another followers, and so you see the button down there, and then the other ones like start popping in there. And you might not have ever thought about architecting an interaction like this before with the load more button. You know, normally you've got some state and you keep like pushing into this array to keep on going. But when you do this like a little bit wacky looking stuff where you have these components that can declaratively call back to you with information, you can now compose your state in totally different ways. For example, I made this little weather app. I'm not going to reload it. I should have. Oh, actually, it's the Wi-Fi is not my problem, or the internet's not my problem, is it? So a little weather app tells you what's going on, and that should be janky, but it's not janky. Huh. Well, I fixed it. Let's save this just to like make sure. Yeah, that's why I have a dark theme too, just right there. So this is getting my geolocation to figure out where we're at. This might totally fail too, but that's okay. And then once it gets our geolocation, well, let's go up and see how that happens. Geolocation, I get an error or I get my coordinates. Get a geo error. You know what? I'm going to turn this off. Whoa! There it is. And then we'll try it with the conference Ethernet. And maybe we could, oh wait, I'm not there yet. So we're looking at this, and we're like, okay, then we get a geo address. So this goes and hits a different API to give me my address, a Google API. And then I go get the forecast, and the forecast comes down to me. And then I have this scroll position thing that like tells me how far down I'm scrolled. And you're looking at all this code, and you're thinking, what the crap is Ryan talking about? And I'm up here thinking, am I out of touch? No. No, it's the Redux users who are wrong. This looks wacky, but it's really composable, especially when the internet works. And it's a ton of fun to compose this stuff together. We could actually, like based on the temperature, we could come in here and we could say something like, well, if the temperature is something, right? We could be like, oh, the pitch is like, I don't know, whatever the temperature is. And then if the internet worked, this thing would be like, boo, beep, depending on the day. We could even do something weirder. Let's go over here, and then this is my last trick of the day. We could say something like, here's a component you're not going to like at all. And what I was going to do when the internet worked is find one of these followers, and as we were iterating over the followers, be like, oh, is this Ryan Florence? And then redirect somewhere. But check this out. So if we just render one of these things, let's just go to localhost. Let's see, google.com always seems to work. So this seems like a totally ridiculous thing to do at first. But if you think about like when you've got these declarative components that are calling back to you with data, you can kind of introspect that data or inspect that data as you're iterating it and be like, oh, actually, you know what? If we're about to render Ryan, we don't want to look at this anymore. Let's redirect and go somewhere else. That is my talk. I've gone way over. I don't want a round of applause. I want a round of applause for Jameson and Matt Zabriskie. They killed it. They've put in so much effort and work, and like they really, really want this conference to be for the community and representative of the community, and I think they've nailed it. Yeah, so go ahead and use Redux. Screw around with your components and try to do like some weird stuff like this and see what happens. And heads up, when React Router version 4 comes out, you might want to like not hate too much of what I just showed you. All right, thanks. We'll see you later.